with Nick. I'm super pumped, man. Obviously, I don't know you a ton, but I know enough about you. Obviously being best friends with my business partner, we've chatted a few times, man, and it's I'm pumped to be here, man, and I'm grateful for you sitting down.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, like you said, it's we know each other, but we don't know each other yet.
Yeah, yeah,
But
man. I'm excited, dude. I've heard a lot of stories. I've talked to you a few times, man, but I'm really pumped to sit down, man, and dive into your life, what you've gone through, and obviously what you're doing, dude. Because it's pretty cool, man. And it's we're all on the same journey. The journey to the top and to be successful.
yep, yep. Let's do it.
So yeah, man, we'll dive in, dude. So I want to talk, get to know, Nick as a as an individual. So I want to first start talk about, where you're from, where you grew up, and how was your childhood? You know what I'm saying? Did you
Yep.
quote unquote have like a normal childhood, a fucked up childhood? How was your experience kind of growing up and where you from?
Yeah. So I grew up in Massachusetts. I grew up in the Plymouth area. Uh, Childhood. So when I was younger, the childhood was normal. It was two parents, um, middle class, good school system, um, and then I played all the sports, all that good stuff. It was extremely normal childhood for a lot of Americans, and then what's also seems normal nowadays is like right around fifth grade, parents get divorced. Um, I remember going through that process. You don't really understand it as a kid. You got school meetings telling you like, "Oh, this is why your parents are doing all that stuff." Yada yada yada. Um, that happened. So I still consider that like kind of normal, though. You know what I mean? Like obviously, it's traumatic to a young child. I remember those conversations. I remember those fights with my parents. I remember those conversations with my dad. Like he was sleeping in his truck for a while after that, and it was like I remember vividly like having a conversation with him, and he's got like blankets and pillows in the back of his truck, being like, "Well, why aren't you coming home?" You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So you don't really understand it, especially like after a while when a couple like I remember I had a few friends when I was younger ask me like if my they thought my dad died because like he wasn't around anymore,
Yeah.
and so like that was a little bit, you know that deviated from the standard, I think, a little bit as a child, but my life still was relatively normal. I wasn't the only kid going through their parents getting divorced. It's not like a unusual thing. Um, but it kind of was in the area that I grew up, right? So like none of my friends, not many people in like a middle upper class area like Plymouth County, not many people's parents are getting divorced, so it was kind of unusual for me. Um, but still like maintained, but I think you really saw that take hold in middle school. That's kind of where I started, rebelling a little bit. Um, there's probably some anger involved, a lot of unquestioned anger. My mother, she was still working at the time. She was an alcoholic, so when she would come home from work, she'd be getting drunk. Um, so and then I had a little brother, right? And like I remember in middle school, like I would come home and it'd just be like me and my little brother there. And like there's no one around, and I didn't live really close to any of my friends either. So it was for years it was like a very lonely, lonely situation. There was a lot of neglect involved. My mother wasn't really involved in raising us. And that got worse throughout my adolescent years. My brother had severe mental health issues, um, severe, like bipolar, psychosis, and everything. There was crazy blowout fights, going on at the house. Like for one example, I remember distinctively, like I walked out of my room, my little brother, like at this time, like he was, and this was at the time too, where my mother didn't want to deal with it, so she sent him to the doctors, and they didn't know much about benzos at the time. They were prescribing him like adult level benzo medications when he was like 10.
Yeah.
So it was making him crazy. Like he was turning psychotic. And I walk out and he's holding a knife to my mother's neck, like while she's sitting in the kitchen floor, like half in the bag. And like, I just remember things like that happened all the time. And so I think that led to a lot of anger. And I think it led to a lot of rebellion. And, that really picked up in high school. So, going into high school, my friend group was the sports. I was still playing a lot of sports. And then, like, freshman year, you saw me start to fall away from that and more into the crowd of, like, let's get high, let's get drunk, let's do all this stuff. And then I remember sophomore year, one of the kids that was heavily involved in that group came up to me. He's like, "Yo, you want to go to a party?" I'm like, "Yeah, like let's do it." I'm a sophomore and I got like juniors and seniors asking me if I want to go to a party. I'm like, "Absolutely." And that's the first time I experienced opiates when I was 16. That's the first time I sniffed a Percocet. And, from there on out, that's where my real life story, I think, begins. From there on out, I fell back from sports. I maintained football throughout my high school career, but man, I didn't live up to my potential whatsoever. I was always getting high and doing all that stuff. Then 2008 happens when I was a freshman. So then my mother lost her job when I was a sophomore due to the financial crisis. And that's when stuff really got bad. That's when poverty took hold, and you mix poverty with drugs. You get a couple outcomes from there. You get, a drug addict or a criminal. I just happened to turn into both. And so like the last couple of years of high school, man, it was all like I was deep into opiates, selling coke, partying all the time, not coming home for days, sleeping at places, like sleeping in drug houses, doing a ton of drug dealing. And as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old, you're not worried about like consequences, or you think you're invincible, right? So like I didn't think I had an addiction, like none of that. And it wasn't until I was like a senior in high school where I really realized, I'm definitely addicted to opiates, but this is the path I'm taking. And yeah, so that was pretty much the high school era. And then there's a lot that we could go into where you could be like, oh, like I had this happen to me and that happened to me and like this was messed up. But like in summary, man, it was like a lot of neglect, an alcoholic mother, a father who did the best he could. My father to this day he's one of my best friends. He did what he could. I thought he could have done more. He wasn't around, obviously, because him and my parents were separated. He lived in New Hampshire for a while, and then he lived in Boston. So, you're talking about an hour and a half, 2 hours away for most of my life. But I mean, that was the crux of like my high school experience. But, obviously it goes a lot deeper than that. Like when you like those, you can sum it up as drug use and drug dealing, but when you're 16 years old, 17 years old, and you're driving into like the ghetto to pick up fingers of heroin to come back and sell in like your middle class neighborhood, like, that's not exactly normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the crux of my life up until I was 18. And then I've talked about Jay with this a little bit too. Like the new chapter really begins like at that point, and we can dive more into that if you want to as well.
Yeah, we'll go into that. I want to touch a couple things, that you said about your childhood, because I think it's important, man. Especially, dude, I grew up, I was adopted. I had, my own issues I dealt with. But man, as a young man, having that person, that you look up to, that you respect it's so vital, because we are going, obviously we're got testosterone running through our, our bodies. We want to fit in. As a man, like for me in school, I wanted everybody to like me, bro. I wanted to be the popular kid. I wanted everybody to like me and be the cool kid. And you're just trying to find your place, man. And unfortunately, like, a lot of people in society end up going down that road to fit in, such as gang violence, drugs, or hanging out with the wrong crowd, just because they don't have that, that person to look up to and that's responsible. And I think that's why it's like, as we're older, it's our call, as solid men, to be there for that younger generation.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. That's something I've really started taking action on in my life is putting myself in mentor roles. I got a couple things going on right now, but yeah, man, absolutely. And that's why I think I gravitated towards that side of life so quick, because you know it was like instantly I had like people who wanted to hang out all the time. Now there's obviously nefarious reasons for that. Once you're the guy that has the drugs, or you're the guy that has the party spots, or you're the guy that has, the fun things that kids want to do at that time. We're also in the middle of the opioid crisis. So like, I'm getting attention from a bunch of junkies. So I'm thinking like, oh, I'm the man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got a little money, like I'm getting high, like I'm selling drugs, like I'm thinking I'm the man. Like that's where I thought I'd fit in. That's where I was getting that respect from and that guidance from, was the people in that area of life. And you're 100% right. When that guidance isn't there as a young child, it's often found in the streets, because, that's where you're going to get the most love, even though it's probably mostly for nefarious reasons.
Yeah. And so, man, you have a normal childhood to a point, right? And then
Yep.
it gets worse, 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 and worse, to where, like, dude, did you graduate high school?
Yeah.
You graduate high school. You're obviously an addict to opioids. You've been in the drug scene. You've dealt drugs. You've lived a fucking life, man, that forced you to grow up from 16 to 18 faster than the majority of people. So when you graduated, what did your life look like, after graduating? Where's kind of the direction that you took?
Yeah. So when I graduated, the opioid addiction was in full swing. At the time, uh, it was still only Percocets and OxyContin, and but when I graduated, you know, the friend group I was in and the people I was hanging out with, we were all pretty much, at the time, Percocets were $30 a piece. That gets expensive when you're doing, you know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 Percocets a day. That gets really expensive. Even if you're selling them, you know what I mean? You're picking up 100 pack, you're doing all your profit. So like you're just continuing just to fuel your addiction. And that's when, and at the time I was doing this with my brother Tom Castana. So I'm doing this with him at the time. Like we're partners in this whole game. And I'll never forget this night, man, because it was a night that just spiraled everything. We were at our buddy's house, you know, doing our thing, and he had moved on to heroin. And he's like, bro, he's like, why are you guys doing those perks? He's like, just sniff this. He's like, if you like, just sniff this. Like, it's way cheaper. Like, you got to do way less. You know, save the perks for selling them. Like, we'll make money that way. Like, do this if you're dope sick or whatever. We're still only 18 at the time, so we still don't fully know like what's going to happen if I do this? Like, we still kind of think we're invincible a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we do it, man. We start sniffing heroin at 18, and that's where it really took hold. And then it was almost like instantaneous, dude. I think within a couple of months, like Percocets weren't even a thing anymore, and it opened us up to this whole new group of individuals, which were heroin addicts. And so at this time, we're 18, 19, we're doing heroin, sniffing heroin, and selling a ton of it. Like, we're selling, you know, a lot of heroin, and we're doing it like out of my garage. Like, we got cars lined down the street. Like, we're dealing with people we shouldn't be dealing with. We're starting to get into guns. Like, Tom started carrying a gun around with him. Just a really dark area of life. And then that's when I realized, and it did turn to the needle. It turned to the needle probably when I was right around 19. It turned to the needle, and that's when I really realized, like, all right, something has to change. At this point, me and Tom had kind of been parting ways a little bit. I fell way deeper into the addiction than he did. At this point, I'm a full blown junkie. I'm scraping by. The drug dealing went out of the way. When you're doing all of your drugs, there's no really way to sell them. And I remember I woke up one morning. I didn't have anything to get high with. I didn't have any money. I was dope sick. And I just got on my knees, dude. And I just prayed. And I was like, God, please, like, help me get out of this. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And I called my dad and I told him, what was going on. I'm like, listen, Dad, I'm a drug addict. Like, I need you to bring me to detox. And he brings me to a detox called, it was I forget what it was called actually, but it was on Mass Ave in Boston. It's called Mass and Cass. Like, I just Google Mass and Cass. Like, it's an absolute, like, like downtown San Francisco or California, like Skid Row. It's basically the Skid Row of Massachusetts. There's a detox right on it. Like, people are selling drugs outside the detox. Like, you go out on the smoke breaks and there's drug dealers like, yo, just leave. Like, come here. I'll get you high for free right now. And then, like, we'll go do whatever. And people would do that. So I'm 19, like, in this place with a bunch of like city dudes, like city junkies and everything. And I'm like, man, this is not the life I want to, or that I was supposed to be living. I'm like, what is going on? You know what I mean? Like, and after that, that's when my story with God really took hold. I got saved. I became a born again Christian, and I was on fire for the Word of God, man. I was like, that's what solidified my sobriety at that point in time. And I was going to church, and the whole nine with that. And then I finally made the decision. Something I always wanted to do was go into the military. There's pictures of me as a kid, like, dressed up for Halloween as a soldier, like, something that was always on my mind. And I was like, I need to figure something out. Like, I'm sober. I've been sober 8 months, but, like, I'm not doing anything with my, like, I'm working at Lowe's. I'm like, I gotta have a change. Like, never really been out of Massachusetts. So that's when I made the decision to go into the Marine Corps. And I mean, that was absolutely pivotal at the time, because I absolutely would have fallen back into that trap. I was already getting lured back in before I joined. Like, I remember when you go to boot camp, they drug test you there. And I had started getting high again before I left. So that first week of boot camp, they did the drug test. I'm like, I'm going to get kicked out. Like, I've only been in a week. I'm going to get kicked out. I don't know how I passed, but I did. So, yeah, man, after high school, it was a brief stint of being a full-fledged heroin addict. And,
Yeah.
use your imagination for what comes with that. But
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, man, because it's a slippery slope that takes you down into a dark place, dude. That like you keep going, you see the trajectory of events that happen and how you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And the sad part is like most people don't get out. You know what I'm saying? They end up dead. Now I want to dive into the Marine Corps. So like you got sober, you started believing in God, born again, started making decisions. You obviously had friends that were still influencing it. Now you made it into the Marine Corps. Let's talk about that experience. Let's talk about what you did in the Marine Corps, how long you're in the Marine Corps, and obviously your experience for serving the country.
yeah, so I remember like in boot camp. So obviously, Marine Corps boot camp, it's 13 weeks. It's the hardest boot camp in the military. Um, it's extremely grueling. I couldn't run. I sucked at running. So, I mean, it was a life changing experience for me because it was really the first time in my life where I felt like, oh, I fit in here. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. Like my whole life playing sports, I was always the leader of the team. Um, my whole life, even through everything, I always felt like I was destined for something greater. Like I had a higher purpose. I had always felt that I was a person that could be that leader, that could be, the one who does great things. And the Marine Corps was the first like small area of life where I was allowed to do that. And so boot camp was that first area where I got thrown into like leadership positions, right? Like you have squad leaders, you have platoon leaders, and I was always one of those people. And I flourished at it. And, you know, the desire for me, the desire for me to be that person accelerated greatly once I got into those roles. I was like, okay, finally I have something in my life where I'm good at it and I like it and I gain respect from it. And it's not, what I was doing. It's not trying to get those things from the streets. And it was awesome, man. And then you know, after boot camp you go to your schooling. So I was an infantry marine, I was a machine gunner. So you go to the School of Infantry. That's in North Carolina as well. Boot camp was in South Carolina. So you go to the School of Infantry, and as I'm here, I'm making friends that I instantly know are going to be friends for the rest of my life, which they still are to this day. Uh, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, the patriotism, it's all something that it sparks something new in you, like it was something that I had never had before in my life. And having that, it really just made me excel as the person I am and the man I am. And there was seven of us. We called ourselves the OG7 because like very rarely in the military do you go through like boot camp, your schooling, and then once you hit the fleet, like your unit for the next 4 years, very rarely do you stay with the same people. It just so happened that the seven of us all happened to stay together throughout the whole entire period. Uh, so once we get to the fleet, man, it was almost, I had felt like I knew that I had came from something extremely difficult. And you know how it is. Like you can tell when someone's been through some shit before in life. And my friend group, and then also like my peers, my leaders, my subordinates, they all sense this too. And when you can sense that in someone, you're kind of drawn to them a little bit. They have this demeanor, they have this aura about them where it's almost like a natural type of leadership because you're like, okay, that person's been through some bad things in their life. They've made it out. You have more life perspective. Um, you have more tools in your tool bag to get through things. So you're answering questions faster. You're coming up with solutions faster, and people gravitate towards that. And that's what happened once I actually got into my unit. I was immediately respected by my peers, my higher ups. They immediately respected me because, you know, I carry myself well. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in great shape. I'm not an ugly dude. I keep my shit together. I'm intelligent. I have no problem stepping into those leadership roles. And, you know, eventually that's what happened. You know, you go through, you know, after that, I only did 4 years. I did my 4 and got out. We deployed twice. It was after the war, so there was no really like major things going on, but we did some great deployments. And, you know, throughout my military career, you know, I got bumped up in leadership roles, and that really allowed me. A lot of the lessons that I learned in the military didn't really flourish and come to fruition until I got out. And then because, and this is the end of my military career, but it was very bureaucratic. And at one point, it got very depressing. Like that last year, like me and my buddies were all ready to get out. We're not doing much. We're like sitting on this base in North Carolina. There's no women. There's nothing fun around to do. Like none of us really know what we're going to do when we get out. And, you know, in the military, there wasn't a lot of God either. You know what I mean? You fight, you drink, you shoot guns, you pray for war. That's pretty much it. You know, there was not a lot of God in my life. And so I kind of backslid away from the word of God a little bit as well. And that last year, I felt myself almost, it was like I knew I was getting out and I knew that I didn't have a plan getting out. It was almost like I just reverted right back to what I knew before my military career. And it was after our second deployment. I had about 6 months left to get out. I was dating this girl in North Carolina, college girl. She played soccer, and they had a house together. Like her and her soccer teammates had a house together, and they went on vacation. And they're like, "Hey, can you watch the house? You know, while we're gone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And we were on post-deployment leave, so I had like a week and a half off to watch the house. And this was in Wilmington, North Carolina. And there's a very prominent drug scene in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's like half college, half ghetto. And I'm sitting around one day and I'm bored out of my mind. And I'm like, man, I'm like, I'm not going to get, we just got drug tested. I'm not going to get drug tested for another 3 months at least. I'm like, I bet you it's so easy to find some opiates around here, find some Percocets or some dope. So I'm sitting around bored out of my mind. And like that thought had came, but I wasn't like acting on it. And I drive to Walmart to get some fishing gear. I'm like, oh, at least I'll go fishing. I drive to Walmart to get some fishing gear. I pull into the parking lot. I look to the left of me. There's two dudes shooting up in their car right next to me. I look at them. I sit in my car. It's off. I'm sitting there for a little bit. I'm like, ah, oh, man, you could just ask them right now. I'm sure they'll give it to you. I got money. I can pay them to get me drugs right now. And I'm like, nah, don't do it. Like, don't do it. Like, you've been through that. Don't do it. Ultimately, the boredom got the best of me. And I roll down my window and I flag them down. I'm like, yo, roll down the window, roll down the window. And they're like, what's up? And I'm like, hey, I'm like, can you guys get me some heroin? Like, I'll pay you. I'll give you $100 to go get me stuff. They're junkies. They're like, absolutely. Like, yeah, let's go. I hop in the car with them. They bring me down, and I forget the name of the street now in Wilmington, North Carolina, but they bring me to this ghetto, right? I get the drugs, and man, instant spiral. It was like that. From that day on, I started using pretty much every day. And I had 6 months until I got out. I had 2 drug tests in that time period. I used my buddy's piss to pass them. And by the day I left, I had destroyed relation because my buddies all knew. They were like, he's getting high. I destroyed those relationships. My relationship was with my girl was in the gutter. She had found out at this point. So I drive off the base that day to my girl's house in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I'm a full blown heroin addict again in the heroin capital of North Carolina. Like, here I am, man, just completely back to square one. And that time period is also, like another chapter in my life is when I got out of the Marine Corps. But I mean, overall, man, like my Marine Corps experience was great. And, a lot of those lessons you hear about that military people talk about, discipline, leadership, um, all that stuff, it really didn't flourish until the last few years where I really started being like, oh, I can take a lot of what I learned in the Marine Corps and apply it to my life today. And that's definitely the most prominent experience of my military career.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. It's crazy because, like, just thinking about that, right? And it all I could think about was purpose the entire time. You know what I'm saying? Like, when we as men and humans lack purpose, bro, we get ourselves into trouble. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's with women, with drugs, with alcohol, anything to self destruct. And that's why, man, like, it's so important to have purpose because keeps you bound. Like, when I wake up in the morning, I hit the gym, I follow my regimen, I eat healthy, I cook my meals, I work, I make my podcasts. Everything's great. But the day I decide not to go to the gym or I go later or boredom creeps in, it's crazy how we can spiral back into old habits and obviously, dude, go down places that we don't want to go and eventually destroy everything. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Purpose is absolutely paramount. It's essential to, you know, living living a good life. Essentially, like it's as simple as that. Like it sounds like a little bit cliche. Like how do you live a good, healthy life? Not depressed, not doing drugs or whatever. Find yourself a purpose. Absolutely, and that's the issue I ran into is there was no purpose for me once I got out of the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps for 4 years was my purpose. And once I realized that that wasn't a career or that chapter in life was ending, I had no tools from beforehand to carry over. There was still no purpose for me. Like, I was going to go to school and use my GI Bill, but like, that's not really purpose. You know what I mean? It was like, I didn't even know what I was doing. I was taking psychology classes and like a bio class, like there was no purpose whatsoever. So you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, man. So you get out of the Marine Corps, you're already a full blown addict, dude. You're back into dope and shooting up. Um, where obviously, dude, I'm pumped to get to where you're at now, dude. Obviously, dude,
Yep.
it's exciting. But what happened after that? Obviously, you had your girl. Did you break up? Did you go back to Boston? Like, what was your story, man? Ultimately, to hitting rock bottom again, to where you're like, okay, fuck this.
Yeah. So and yeah, we'll get to where I'm at now, but it's it's essential that I'm only here. I'm only at where I'm at now is because of everything that I've gone through. So like it wouldn't make sense to not cover all those bases. So yeah, so I'm out of the Marine Corps. I'm living in Wilmington. I'm living in my girl's soccer house with like a bunch of girls, like doing nothing every day but getting high. And about 2 months afterwards, I found my own place. I move in. I move in with this person into their house. It's like a two-bedroom house. I have one bedroom. She's got the other bedroom. And this was about 4 blocks away from the ghetto of Wilmington, North Carolina. Ton of drug dealing, ton of drug use, whatever you can imagine, it's there. And I was bouncing at a bar, so I wasn't making enough money. And I'm like, man, I should just start dealing again. Like there's a huge market down here. I can make a ton of money. So one night I'm bouncing at the bar and I meet someone, and the guy's like, we get to talking, whatever, yada yada yada, and he's like, listen, he's like, I got guns and drugs, and I'm like, all right, I'm listening, and he's like, I need someone to sell all of them. Wilmington's a port town, so everything comes off the boat. And it is a hub. It's not a very well-known hub, but it is a hub in the United States for guns, drugs, whatever you can think of, human trafficking. There's a ton of human trafficking down there. So here I am, dude. Now I'm a full-blown addict. I'm selling a ton of heroin, selling a ton of guns, and I'm at a level where it well surpassed what I was doing before the Marine Corps. Thousands of dollars a week. And this not only allowed my addiction to just spiral way out of control. I mean, I was probably shooting around $500 worth of dope a day, but I was making 3-4 times that a day as well. So it got to the point where, my relationship with this girl is completely down the toilet now. I'm living in trap houses. I had my other house at the time, but I wasn't there. It just didn't make sense. I could just stay in the hood and sit on a porch and deal drugs all day. And basically that was my life for about a year after I got out of the Marine Corps, probably a year and a half. And it got to the point where I think I had like 130, 140K in cash just sitting around. And, at the time, this is like a year and a half in, and I'm like, man, like, I got to at least try to get clean. Like, I was like, I'm still going to sell drugs. I'm still going to sell guns, but like, I got to get clean. So I hop on methadone. My buddy's like, yeah, I got like 40 methadone pills. And I'm like, all right, let me hop on methadone and get clean off this. And then I can take this money and go do something with it, right? Like, I kind of made a plan. I'm like, I'm going to buy a house with this money. Like, I'm going to buy a multifamily or something with this money and start making money legally. But right before that, dude, this girl called my sister and she's like, hey, Nick's a heroin addict. Like, he's not doing, my family's up in Massachusetts. She's like, Nick's a heroin addict. He's going to die. So one morning I wake up to a knock on the door of my house, and my sister and my father had drove 12 and a half hours down to North Carolina to come get me. And so I wake up one morning, they're at the door, and I'm like, what the hell is this? I'm like, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, let me see your arms. I got track marks on my arms. And they're like, what's going on? Like, what the hell happened? Like, we thought you were doing great down here. You know what I mean? I'm the king of putting on a facade. Like, I'm the king of swindling people to think that I'm doing well when I'm doing horrible. Like, I was great at it. And somehow I managed to convince them that, oh, those were old. Like, I messed up a little bit when I got out. Those are old. I'm doing fine now. Somehow I convinced them. And they drive back to Massachusetts. And that's when I was like, all right, I gotta get clean a little bit. So I get clean for like a couple months. And I'm like, you know what? I'm like, there's nothing down here for me in North Carolina. Let me take this cash up to Massachusetts and go restart my life up there. All my family's there. I got friends there. Let me restart my life in Massachusetts. So I come up to Massachusetts, and I had acquired a ton of guns and everything at the time as well. So I'm driving through New York, Virginia, North Carolina, whatever. I'm driving through all these states with like probably 20K worth of guns and ammo in my Jeep, all unregistered. I don't have a license to carry. I don't have an FID or anything. I'm driving through these states with 130K in cash. So I'm driving through these states with a life sentence in the back of my Jeep. I make it to Massachusetts. I show up at my dad's house, And I end up living with him in Mass. And when I get up here, I run out of the methadone. So what do? I just call some people that I knew from before I went in. And boom, now I'm right back and I'm ripping and running up here. I spent 130 grand on drugs because I wasn't dealing up here. So I spent 130 grand on dope in about like 7 months. And all that was, that was buying stuff, women, whatever. All that was involved as well. But I'm doing about $1,000 worth of heroin a day at this point. And one day I run out of cash. So I'm like, well, now I have to feed this $1,000 a day addiction. So I start breaking into houses. And one of the houses I broke into one day, this was in early 2019, had a Ring camera. Got my face. I had no idea that it did. One day I'm driving to that, I think it was a couple days later, I'm driving to that same neighborhood, and I'm driving through a construction zone, and I just see this cop just look at me, and he just points. He points at me. I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? And we're just staring at each other as he drives by. And I make it about a half mile down the road, and I see his lights flick on. And he leaves the construction zone and chases after me. Pulls me over. We go through the whole nine. He's like, is this you? Like, on this Ring camera, holds up a photo. I'm like, nah, if they think that's me, I'm like, summons me. I'll see you in court. Like, if they think that's me, they can take it to court and prove it. But I had a suspended license, dude, like an absolute idiot. And my Jeep wasn't insured. So he's like, no, man, like, you have a suspended license. Your Jeep's insured. Like, I'm taking you to jail. Like, I'm arresting you. So they arrest me. They bring me back to the station, and they're like, they search my Jeep. They find like some drug paraphernalia. They find some stolen items, and they find a fully loaded 12-gauge shotgun in the back of my Jeep with a 30-round magazine. The 12-gauge shotgun and the ammo without an LTC, that's an 18-month mandatory minimum sentence. So mandatory minimum means there is no out. There's no good time. There's no probation. There's nothing. You have to serve that 18 months. The 30-round magazine carried a 2.5-year mandatory minimum sentence. So now I'm facing 4 years in state prison, just like that. Just like that. A year and a half out of the Marine Corps, facing 4 years in state prison. And that's when everything changed. That's when, that first night in that jail cell, I remember I was just bawling my eyes out, dude. Just devastated, man. Just crying. Like, I thought I had made it out. And here I am, dude, facing 4 years in state prison. Life is completely ruined. But something kept telling me the whole time, like, it's going to work out somehow. And I just remember, like, making a promise to God and myself that night that, I knew I was done. They say in like the AA or NA space, I don't really deal with that anymore, but they say, like, never say never, because you never know, like, you could always relapse. And I was like, nah, like, fuck that. Like, this is never, like, I'm never going to get high again. Like that. I knew right there that whole part of my life was over. If I have to do 4 years, I'm going to get out and I'm going to make something of myself. And so that was really the turning point, man, in my whole entire life, where I just knew that I couldn't live that life anymore. I was finally faced with the reality of where that life leads to. I'm lucky it wasn't death. I did overdose in North Carolina. Luckily, I was with someone who had Narcan, but I was blue in the face, lips were blue, no pulse. I was dead. I died. And luckily the Narcan brought me back to life. But man, like, it was such a horrible experience, but now, like, what an amazing experience it was to go through that. And then, I go to jail. I'm in jail, And I'm in jail for 4 months, and then I bail out. And jail was, bro, I have no complaints about jail. Like, because I was growing so much, I was growing so rapidly in jail. I was back into the Word of God. I was figuring out a plan for when I got out. I knew that I wasn't ever getting high again. So jail really wasn't that bad for me. Like, I didn't really mind it. I was like, I kind of need to be here. Like, this is kind of nice being here because it allowed me to really have to focus on what I was going to do with my life. And then I bail out, man, and COVID hits. 2 years, my case gets postponed. During that 2 year period is where I just grinded, dude. It was like I got back into the school. I started finding ways to make money legally. I was doing little side hustles, little side gigs. I was living in a sober house. I linked back up with Jay. You know, we're crushing the gym every day. We're talking about goals, dreams, what we're going to do, yada, yada, yada. But the whole time, that whole 2 years, the court's still telling me, hey, you're going to have to do this 18 months again. We just have to wait for COVID to end. So COVID, you know, kind of dwindles away a little bit. It's 2021. I go back to court and I'm like, hey, listen, like, I'm about to have a bachelor's degree. I'm applying to law school. I have my own place. You know, I got a truck. My relationships are mended. I'm doing well financially. And the judge is just like, we can't send this kid back to jail. Like, we just can't do it. It wouldn't be true justice. So they send me to what's called the Veterans Treatment Program, where it's a treatment court for first offender veterans that, you know, have issues when they get out of the military, drugs, whatever, alcohol, they mess up. They didn't want to send it to me at first because my case was too severe. They found some loophole and sent it to me. And I mean, that was it, man. I was off and running at that point. I was like, what a break, dude. An absolute miracle. And I truly think that the only reason that happened is because A, God allowed it to happen, but B, the desire, the purpose, the drive, all that stuff to live a better life put me into the position where it was undeniable and unrefutable that, okay, this person has changed their life. And we can't send them back to jail. Like, that doesn't happen. I might be the only person to legitimately plead guilty to mandatory minimum gun charges in Massachusetts that didn't have to serve that sentence. I really might be the only person in Massachusetts that's done that.
Yeah, man. That's crazy, dude. Like that story, like, dude, it's insane, right? But like a huge thing is I'm a huge believer of God, right? Because I look back at the dumb shit I've done. You know, I was never crazy into drugs, never crazy into all that. But I look at all this shit that I've done, and I'm like, damn, dude, I could have, you know, got locked up. I could have, you know, had a lot of bad stuff happen to me. But I've always known, dude, that I'm destined for greatness. You know what I'm saying? I've always known that I'm gonna be somebody. And I'm a firm believer, like you said, man, if you believe in God, you work your ass off, you do the right things, like shit's gonna work itself out. And and it works itself out one way or another. Just being able to keep going, man. And it's not easy, but it's important to stick to the grind, dude, and live up to your potential. Because so many fucking people don't live up to their potential. You know, they don't ever make it out. Because we all make mistakes, bro. We all go through ups and downs. We all go through, shit that happens in our lives. But majority of people don't make it out of that. They don't make it to the level and the destination that you and I are both chasing.
Absolutely, man. Especially when you're sticking a needle in your arm, not many people make it out from that. And some people do, right? But here's the thing. There's a difference between making it out of that lifestyle and, just being sober and like, finding the job and like going about your life. And then there's making out of that lifestyle and turning yourself into something that is beyond what anyone could have ever imagined. And that was my goal. Like, my goal wasn't like from day one of, being in jail. Like, when I started making those goals, my goal wasn't to just get sober, like, grab a union job and like work the 9 to 5 and like, get the average house and like, just live that life. That wasn't my goal. That scared me. I'm like, if I will relapse and I will go back to using and go back to that lifestyle if that's what I do. And I knew, I'm like, I have to excel at something. I have to be above average. I have to be, top whatever percent if I'm gonna make a life for myself. Like there's no middle ground for me with anything. Everything I do is either I don't do it at all or I do it 100%. Whether that's drugs, whether that's drug dealing, whether that's violence, whether it's school, whether it's work, it's either I don't do it at all or I do it 100%. And I think that's a huge um, differentiator between guys like us and other people. We don't the average life, like the middle ground, doesn't appeal to us whatsoever. If anything, it's more of a failure to us than anything.
Yeah.
And I would rather die knowing that I tried to make it to the top and failed than just living that normal life and dying like that. I don't want to die with regrets, man. I don't want to die without seeing my full potential.
Yeah,
And
dude. No,
go
bro.
ahead.
No, I'm the same way, man. Like I have like tatted on me, all bets on me, right? A lot of people think I'm cocky, I'm conceited, but like I'm the fucking best, and I'm gonna be the fucking best at it. And that's like, dude, that obsession that I have and that hunger and that drive, dude. I was like, I won't fucking stop. And not a lot of people. I feel like we all believe inside of us that we are destined to be great, right? But most of the people settle and they don't. But for me, man, like just like you said, dude, I'm going all the way. Like there's no other option but all in. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm all in and let's go. And so I want to talk about what you're all into because obviously, dude, you're doing good. You got a good thing going, man. I want to talk about what you're all in doing, that your decision, like you're like, okay, I'm done doing drugs. I'm gonna be something. I'm gonna be the fucking best. Now, what is that you're gonna be the fucking best at?
So it took a little bit, right? Like I knew that I wanted to grind. I knew that I wanted to get somewhere. I've made like multiple plans. There were different avenues I was going to approach, um, but I was a little bit limited, right? Because I was still on probation. I was on an ankle monitor for a while. I couldn't leave the state of Massachusetts. Like I remember when you brought Jay down to Utah. Like if I wasn't on probation, I would have been there with you. You know what I mean? Like I had a lot of avenues that I wanted to approach, but I just couldn't because I couldn't even leave the state of Massachusetts. Like I had an opportunity for me down in Florida. Um, that was similar. It was like a sales gig, but it was on the medical side, like medical device sales side. My buddy owned the company down there, or he was working for a company. He owns a company now, but he was working for a company. He started his own thing. He's doing his own thing now, and out in California, I think. Like I had a couple of areas that I wanted to pursue, but I was limited because like I lacked experience or I couldn't move out of the state. I was on probation, so I'm like, you know, the only really path I had for me available at the time was education because I had the GI Bill. So I was like, I can stay in here and I can use the GI Bill. I make money every month going to school. Like, let me open up some doors. And it wasn't until like end of 20, because my plan the whole time was once I'm off probation, I'm out of here. Like, I'm gonna go do something in a different state where there's more opportunity. Um, but then my mentor that I have now is my mentor and my boss. I saw what he was doing, and he's a real estate attorney and he's a title agent. He owns his own firm and he invests heavily in commercial real estate. And, obviously he's doing very, 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 very well for himself. He's in the top of his field. And I'm like, man, you know, I didn't really I didn't really think about law school too much until he was like, why don't you go to law school? He said, follow my footsteps. And that was exactly what I needed at the time. I was like, all right, you know what? I will. Let me at least apply to law school. I apply to law school. I get in the summer before law school. He's like, all right, cool. He's like, you're in law school. Why don't you come work for me for the summer? See if you like it. See if this is the path you want to take. And we're talking real estate here. Real estate was one of the goals. I'm like, I have to get into real estate. And once I was in that office and I saw how it worked and I saw how well he was doing, and I saw the amount of successful individuals that were around all the time, I was like, whoa. I'm like, this is where I need to be. Because now I'm surrounded by all these top performers. The wealth of knowledge I gained in that summer was like unfathomable. Like, it was like I opened up like a key to a whole new dimension of like, oh, you think you know what like making money is? You think you like have some money? Like, you think you're doing well? Look at this. Like, this is a world where some people like don't ever even see. And that's why a lot of people settle for mediocrity, is because they don't ever get a glimpse into what that lifestyle is like. And I'm like, all right, I'm like, this is it. This is the path. I'm like, this is the route I'm going to take. So I go to law school, and I've been working for that same mentor, that same boss now for like a year and a half. And, you know, I'm going to be working for him when I get out. And the good thing about it is there's still freedom, right? So like when I get out, like I work for him, I work for the firm, but he's my friend on top of everything. So like I'll be getting a better deal than most new attorneys would going into a business. But the good thing about the real estate law side and the title side is you build your own clientele. It's all you. Like, it's you and your clients. Yeah, you work, you're associated with this firm, you get to use their name, but it's on you. Like, there's no salary. You bet on yourself. And I'm like, that's what I want. I don't want to be like, I don't want to have that, oh, here's 80 grand a year, you know, you'll get up to 150 eventually, you'll get up to 200 eventually. No, like I want to hit the ground running. Like, I want to build my own portfolio.
Yep.
And so if we want to talk about like, what am I going to be the best at? It's going to be that. It's going to be not only that real estate, the legal side of real estate, but it's going to be working with those developers, building my own real estate portfolio, building my own legal clientele. And, you know, I have plans, I have ways, you know, that I plan on going about this. I have a great mentor. He showed me the ropes. I will follow in his footsteps. Our company just went national on the title side, so we're doing deals throughout the whole entire country now. We're growing at a rapid pace, and you know, there's a difference between entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship, right? So intrapreneurship is exactly what I'm doing. You enter into a growing company, but you enter into like one of those top levels right away where you automatically bring value and you help grow that company. And that's going to involve, you know, my own clientele, my own deals, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to grow that firm, dude, and we're going to blow it up. And it's on a national level. Like, you know, there's title companies out there that are doing hundreds of millions of dollars of deals every year. And we're going to get to that point, and I'm going to be a factor in that. And it's not a question in my mind that we're going to get to that point.
Yeah, bro, it's exciting, dude, to hear you talk about it. Because, like, dude, when I talk about like my dreams and my success and what I'm doing, it's with the same passion and energy, dude, as you have. Because it's that self belief, that drive, that nothing's gonna fucking stop us, right? Nothing's gonna stop us. We may stumble, we may fall, but now that you've kind of elevated and you have this plan and you're going through law school, you have a little bit left though. I want to talk about your daily schedule, like, dude, because we as men, bro, we'll be the first to admit we're weak, right?
Yeah.
Fucking, dude, we're weak, man. And, you know, I look at candy and, dude, my mouth salivates and I'm like, dude, I can't have that shit. I can't eat that. And, like, dude, once I open up the candy, it's done. I'm buying more bags and it's just, dude, down the rabbit hole. So what is your daily schedule like that's keeping you ground and that's keeping you on this, obviously, this path? of every day to ultimately living your dream in your life.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be the first to admit, right? Like I'm not I'm not one of those people that sticks to like this rigid schedule of like I'm up at 5 and by 5:30 I have this done and by 7 this is done and by 10 this is done. Um I work best I work best with a flexible schedule, right? So, for example, like just a small thing, which is like what you hear all the time on like these clips on social media and stuff like that. Is like I'm in bed by 11 and I'm up at 4 every single day. It's like, yeah, maybe that works for you in the situation you're at now. Like, but if I'm huge on sleep, I'm not productive unless I have my 7 to 8 hours. So if I'm doing something, I don't get to bed until 1 a.m. one morning, I will sleep till 8 a.m. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I will get that 8 hours, right? And then outside of that though, like there are there are certain things that are a must every single day. First and foremost, above all, is there will be some type of workout that gets done during the day. Absolutely. Like that's non-negotiable with me. It's become at this point in my life, it's become a habit. It's not even like a must do. It's not like anything like that. I have to get there. It's just it gets done, and no matter what. Like it just happens at some point during the day. A lot of my day is spent either working or researching, but like I said, that remains flexible. You know what I mean? Like I'll pump out 3 hours of work on Tuesday from 10 to 1 o'clock, but then on Thursday those 3 hours might get pumped out from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. You know,
Yeah.
and in between those things, there's a lot of things that get done, like the little things that have to get done around the house. Like I make sure my area remains clean. If I have errands to run, they get done. If dishes need to be done, they get done. Like all those little things, they get done throughout the day as well. But I am still working. I am still in law school, so the majority of my day is co-mingling those things. Like okay, like we have a deal that needs to, this needs to get done for this deal today. So I'm going to dedicate 2 hours of that to get done today. And then I'll do 3 to 4 hours of studying, after lunch. And then I'll go to the gym and then I'll come home. I'll do a little bit more studying. I'll spend time with my girl. I'll go to bed. I'll wake up and I'll do the exact same thing the next day. And it may be just like, I don't know, maybe it's foreign to most people, and that's why it sounds so appealing when you hear people say like I make my bed every day, like I eat clean every day, I gym every day. But like, man, that's like just the basic stuff, right? Like I do that every day. Like that's part of, I guess if you want to call that a rigid schedule and like structure, then sure, call it that. But like those are just the basics. Like when I think about rigid schedules and like I think about people who it's really not like a rigid schedule. They're just going to work. It's like, yeah, go to work. You have to work 10 hours today. Okay, do it. That's not a rigid schedule. That's doing what you have to do. Like a rigid schedule is like boot camp. You know what I mean? Like from 5 to 6, you do this. From 7 to 9, you do this. From 9 to 2, you do this. From 2 to 5, you do this. From 7 to the next morning, you do this. Like every single day for 13 weeks, no deviation. If that's what you're doing, then you're probably missing out on something else, some other task that could be done. And I don't know, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. No, dude, I like it, man. It's just, I mean, dude, it's just getting shit done. Your whole thing that you were talking, dude, I was just thinking about taking action. You know what I'm saying? Your
Yeah.
first podcast that you and Jay did was just take action. You know what I'm saying? And you wake up and you just get to work. Like that's why for me, I just started waking up at 6 a.m. and going straight to the gym. I make my smoothie, I go do my things. Because dude, I hate fucking waking up early, dude. I hate it. But I know that if I wake up and I'm tired and I roll out of bed and I grab my shit and I go to the gym, Well, dude, I get my gym done. I come straight to the office here. I shower and get ready here at the office. Dude, I'm already here. I'm already good. It's already forcing me to work. Rather than if I know if I sleep in, I might lay in bed for an hour, check ESPN, check my fantasy football team, then make a little breakfast, and then get on my day. You know what I'm saying? Which I think, dude, it's important, man, to find out what works for you, but just to fucking take action, dude. Like if you see dishes in your sink, do them. You know what I'm saying? If you like wake up and I see my bed, I'm like, all right, dude, I'm gonna make my bed. Just doing all these things to take action, man, is gonna lead to winning. And when you win, you become a winner. I'm reading Winning by Tim Grover, bro. Fucking, it's fire.
That's a great book.
Yeah, it's great, man. And it's like, dude, just start to fucking win.
Yeah.
And stack those wins. And when you stack so many wins, you keep winning, you become a winner, and you chase that. And that's why, like, like you hit the gym every day, and you're like, that's just what I do. I don't have to force myself to get there. I don't have to do anything. It's just a non-negotiable. It just is part of my life right now.
Yeah, and also like on this topic of like schedule and whatnot as well. A lot of people fail to realize how much time they have in a day, especially if you're a single male without any kids. If you're pressed for time where you need to like schedule everything by the half an hour, you're doing something wrong. Like you're wasting time somewhere. Like check your screen time, because I guarantee you that's an issue. Like if you're sleeping more than 8 hours a night, then you're wrong. But like I can sleep 8 hours every night, and I still find myself at some point in the day like, what do I do now? There's so much time, and people fail to realize how much time you have in a day. And like a lot of that time for me, like that downtime is spent like I'll find myself like, oh, what do I do now? And then an hour and a half later, like I'm balls deep into like a real estate options contract for a commercial building in Texas that's selling for $300 million. How they did it, how they did the deal. Like I have endless notes on that stuff, and I'm like, okay, like now it's funny because you can find ways to waste time, and it can either be productive or it can be unproductive, and it's completely up to you. And I'm not going to sit here and say I haven't been unproductive with time before in my life. Obviously I have. Like anyone who says they haven't is just lying.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it is what it is.
productivity. Well, dude, that's why, like, for me, right? I gotta sit my ass in this chair and do my work. I gotta sit here because, dude, I can't work from home. I can't work from there. I can't. I gotta literally sit my ass here and do the work on my computer, and then when I leave, I'm done. Because me as a human being, like, I just personally can't. So I found out what works for me. When I'm home, I need to make sure, like, dude, because I love fantasy football, bro, and ESP. I'm sports. I'm a sports fan. I'm a sports addict, right? So, like, dude, I can spend time reading, doing all the articles, but I make sure that I'm like have my purpose. So I was like, okay, I gotta have my meals. I gotta cook, and I love to cook. So I find like what you said, like you start researching and stuff. I spend my time in the kitchen. I'm cooking. I'm cleaning. I'm eating healthy, and it obviously it's passing time, but it's benefit to my mission, and my mission is being healthy, and it's something that like instead of wasting my time on social media and eating fast food or shit food, I'm in cooking healthy, learning how to cook, and being able to do that and spending my day being productive. Even though I'm just cooking, I'm making a good meal that I enjoy and spending my time wisely.
Absolutely, man. And that's all it comes down to, bro, at the end of the day, because there's ebbs and flows and how busy you are too as well. Like that's one thing. Like when I'm working during the summer, my schedule is a lot more rigid. Like I will be up at 7 a.m. every morning, so I have 2 hours before I have to be into work. That 2 hours consists of, you know, breakfast, getting my water, and getting 20 minutes in on the assault bike, so my mind's clear for the day. Getting my outfit ready, like I dress nice. I like to dress nice when I'm at work. You got to have a good image. So like my clothes are laid out, um, they're ironed, they're dry cleaned, whatever. I go to work. I'm at work from 9 to 5. I get home. I eat. I take my dogs out. I gym. I get home. Probably do a little bit of research, no matter like that's one thing that is rigid for me. There will always be research. There's a never ending endeavor of learning. Um, and then I wake up the next morning and I do the same exact thing. But luckily, I'm blessed to the point where, my 9 to 5 is really just I get paid to learn how to be successful every single day, and it's a blessing. But also, like, I've put myself in that situation, which everyone can do if they try to.
Yeah,
But
you picked your path, bro, and you're continuing to pick your path. It's like during sales season, man. Like when I'm knocking those doors, bro, it's rough. It's ruthless. I mean, it's just
yeah,
all day, every day. But just like you said, man, like I go out and I perform, and I perform, and I go every single day, and it is what it is. And that's why, like, I had such a hard time as soon as sales season ended to like finding. I talked to Jay about it, finding my purpose. I'm like, well, dude, like, what do I do now? And that's why I like started my podcast. I obviously do gym and crazy hard. I'm trying to get jacked and shredded and do transform everything, man. All about health. And so just taking that, man, and being able to continue my purpose, continue my passion, and just bettering myself. But dude, I'm pumped we were able to hop on this, man, and learn about who you are as an individual, shit you've gone through, the ups and the downs, life lessons. But before we close, man, um, I want you to, if you were to die today, right, and you had your last little words of wisdom to give to me, to give to the world, what would it be?
it's a good question. I think that's the first time I've ever been asked that. If I was on my deathbed right now and I had to give one thing to the world, I'd probably I'd probably tell them that until you realize how soft you are, you'll never understand how strong you are. And that being said, there's only one thing really that truly holds you back. And I'm sure everyone's heard it before, but it is that inner voice. And I'm the king of that inner voice telling you to not do the things that you should, telling you to be lazy, telling you to just sit around and do nothing with your life. I'm the that voice for me is the most, it's so prominent in my life. And until you just get up and overcome that voice, do the things that you don't want to do, until you do that, life will never mean anything to you ever.
So say that quote one more time. That little phrase.
Until you realize how soft you are, you'll never realize how strong you are.
Yeah, that's fire, man. Love that, dude. I love this, dude. It's awesome, man, because we as men have a duty to lead and lead from the front and to develop. And we're all on this journey together, bro. No one's fucking perfect. We've all made tons of mistakes. We make mistakes every day, but as long as we learn from those mistakes, continue to grow, continue to educate ourselves, the sky's the limit, bro. And I can't wait to see where you go, where I go, and where we go together. Because Lord knows, bro, that we're gonna need a real estate attorney to buy lots of fucking properties.
Oh, dude, we're gonna be whipping up mad deals from here all the way up the East Coast, dude. We're gonna have. I can't wait to buy I can't wait to do all the legal work on the Tier 1 warehouse. I
Yeah,
can't
bro.
wait for that.
Yeah, dude. It was great having you, dude.